In a moment of disarming sincerity, Albert Einstein, the mind that redefined our understanding of the universe, confessed, "The exaggerated esteem in which my life work is held makes me very ill at ease. I feel compelled to think of myself as an involuntary swindler." This startling admission is not a historical anomaly but the echo of a profound, often hidden sentiment that haunts the corridors of success. Prominent figures of our own era, from former First Lady of the United States Michelle Obama to Facebook guru Sheryl Sandberg, have publicly expressed similar feelings of inadequacy despite their undeniable achievement. These confessions reveal a troubling paradox. Why do highly competent and externally validated individuals feel, in their innermost selves, like frauds? This persistent feeling of self-doubt, the constant fear of being exposed and the inability to internalize one's own successes constitute the core of what is known as impostor syndrome. It is an experience that resonates powerfully with a broad audience. From accomplished students who fear their admission to a prestigious university was a mistake to seasoned professionals who believe their promotion is the result of luck, not merit. To understand this complex phenomenon, a terminological clarification is essential. The concept was first introduced into academic literature in 1978 by Pauline Rose Clance and Suzanne Imes as the imposter phenomenon. Their seminal study focused on a sample of high-achieving women who, despite objective evidence of their competence, degrees, academic honors, professional recognition, persisted in the belief that they were not truly intelligent and had fooled everyone who thought otherwise. These women attributed their success to external factors such as luck, charm, or an error in judgment by others, living with a perpetual fear of being unmasked. Although the later popularized term, impostor syndrome, is now widely used, it is crucial to note that this is not an official mental disorder. The phenomenon is not listed as a distinct diagnosis in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders or the International Classification of Diseases. Therefore, the academic term phenomenon is often preferred, as it more accurately frames the experience, not as a pathology, but as a psychological construct, a reaction to certain stimuli and events. This distinction is fundamental to avoid stigmatization and to approach the issue from a broader perspective that includes both individual and environmental factors. This report aims to provide a comprehensive and nuanced dissection of the imposter phenomenon. Moving beyond surface-level definitions to explore its depth-seated mechanisms, we will analyze why competent individuals attribute their success to luck or superhuman effort instead of acknowledging their own merit. We will investigate the genesis of this doubt, exploring its complex roots from early family dynamics to systemic pressures in academic and professional environments. We will map its diverse manifestations, from the vicious cycle of self-perpetuation to the 5 distinct typologies of the imposter. We will quantify its devastating impact on mental health, generating anxiety, depression, and burnout, acting as an invisible brake that leads to self-sabotage and unfulfilled potential. Finally, we will offer a robust set of evidence-based tools and strategies, addressed both to the individual, to navigate this difficult inner territory, and to organizations, to build environments that no longer cultivate this sense of fraudulence. The goal is to transform understanding into a path toward authenticity and the reclamation of one's own worth. The modern understanding of the imposter phenomenon marks a crucial conceptual transition, from viewing it solely as an individual's problem, to recognizing it as an often logical response to a specific context. Although the initial research by Clance and Iams laid the groundwork for understanding individual psychology and family dynamics, a critical contemporary perspective emphasizes that placing the entire responsibility on the individual is incomplete, and can even be harmful. This perspective introduces the concept of which shifts the focus from a supposed internal deficiency to the external forces that induce the feeling of fraud. Highly competitive environments, toxic organizational cultures, and the systemic marginalization of certain groups are now recognized as powerful causal factors. Thus, the feeling of being an imposter does not arise spontaneously, but is often induced by an environment that systematically causes you to doubt your competence and belonging. This understanding is fundamental because it dictates that effective solutions must be both individual and systemic. The origins of imposter feelings can often be traced back to childhood, where certain family dynamics create fertile ground for the development of self-doubt. Clance and Imes identified 2 recurring family patterns in individuals prone to the imposter phenomenon. Family labeling. In one model, a child is designated as the intelligent one in the family, while another receives the label of sensitive, sociable, or charming. The child labeled as sensitive, even if they achieve exceptional academic performance, constantly struggles to prove an intelligence that the family seems not to fully recognize. Consequently, they come to internalize the idea that their successes are not due to native intellectual abilities but to other qualities, such as an ability to intuit what teachers want or extraordinary effort. This discrepancy between external achievements and internal family validation sows the seeds of doubt, excessive praise, and the illusion of perfection. The second pattern involves a childhood where the person was excessively praised and presented as perfect, naturally talented, and capable of excelling at anything with ease. This idealized image shatters when, later in life, they face real challenges, inevitable failures, and discover their limits. The shock between the self-image constructed by the family and the complex reality of adult life can trigger intense feelings of imposture, with the person questioning whether the praise they received was ever justified. Families that place an overwhelming emphasis on achievement and send mixed messages alternating between exaggerated praise for success and harsh criticism for failure significantly increase the risk of developing fraudulent feelings. In such environments, self-worth becomes contingent on performance, generating a perpetual anxiety related to the need to succeed in order to be loved and valued. These early experiences often intertwine with certain personality traits. A particularly strong correlation exists between the imposter phenomenon and perfectionism. Perfectionists define competence by achieving flawless standards, considering any result below perfection a failure. Likewise, neuroticism, or the tendency toward anxiety, worry, and negative emotions, is a predisposing factor. These traits create an impossibly high internal standard that constantly fuels the cycle of perceived failure and self-doubt. Imposter feelings are not just a product of the past, they are activated and exacerbated by the environments in which we live and work. Culture of extreme competition. Certain environments, by their very structure, are incubators for self-doubt. The academic world, with its publish or perish motto, where stakes are high, goals can be vague, and feedback is often delayed or absent, is a classic example. So are highly competitive industries like technology, finance, or law, where constant comparison with colleagues perceived as brilliant can erode the confidence of even the most capable individuals. Marginalization and belonging. Belonging to an underrepresented or marginalized group, whether by gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, or disability, is a significant risk factor. Individuals from these groups may face additional pressure to prove their worth. They may wonder if they were accepted into a program or promoted based on real merit or due to affirmative action policies, which fundamentally undermines their sense of legitimacy and belonging. Environments that are not truly inclusive, where role models and representation are lacking, make these individuals feel alienated, invisible, and undervalued, all key symptoms of the imposter experience. 1. The impact of social media. In a hyper-connected world, social media platforms, especially professionally oriented ones like LinkedIn, add a new layer of pressure. Constant exposure to the edited versions and trophy galleries of others, careers, can trigger unhealthy social comparisons, fueling feelings of inadequacy and imposter thoughts. Although a more speculative area, some research explores the possible neurobiological underpinnings of the imposter phenomenon. One interesting hypothesis links this experience to a chronic activation of the body's stress system, particularly the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. The constant anxiety of being found out, the fear of evaluation, and perfectionistic pressure could keep the body in a prolonged state of fight or flight. This chronic activation of the stress system can lead to an imbalance of neurotransmitters, similar to that observed in anxiety and depression disorders. While this connection requires more research, and should be treated with caution, it offers a possible biological explanation for the intense psychological suffering and somatic symptoms, often reported by people with imposter feelings. To effectively combat the imposter phenomena, it is essential to understand its internal mechanisms. This is not a static feeling but a dynamic process, a vicious cycle that is Moreover, it manifests in different ways, which can be better understood through specific archetypes or types. The imposter cycle model, developed by Pauline Clance, is fundamental to understanding why success, paradoxically, does not heal, but often intensifies feelings of fraudulence. This cycle describes a sequence of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that repeat and reinforce each other. Step 1. The achievement task and initial anxiety. The cycle begins when the person is entrusted with an important task or a performance-related challenge. For most people, this might generate a moderate level of stress. For someone with imposter feelings, however, the task immediately triggers a wave of intense anxiety, self-doubt, and a paralyzing fear of failure. Thoughts like this, "Time they'll surely find me out," or "I don't have what it takes to do this," become dominant. Step 2. The extreme behavioral response. To manage this overwhelming anxiety, the person resorts to one of two extreme strategies. Over-preparation. The individual invests a disproportionate amount of time and effort, working much harder than necessary to complete the task to a reasonable standard. This behavior is fueled by perfectionism and the need to ensure that no mistake can be found. Procrastination, followed by frenzied preparation. Alternatively, the fear of failure can be so great that it leads to postponement. The person avoids the task until the last moment, when time pressure forces them into a period of intense and chaotic work to meet the deadline. Step 3. Success and temporary relief. Due to the extraordinary effort, the task is usually completed successfully. This positive outcome brings an immediate but ephemeral sense of relief. The anxiety dissipates, but only for a short time. Step 4. Discounting success and external attribution. This is the crucial moment of the cycle, the point where the imposter's logic deviates from reality. Instead of internalizing the success and attributing it to their own competence, the person actively discounts it. Praise and positive feedback are rejected or minimized. The attribution of success is based on the strategy used in Step 2. If there was over-preparation, success is attributed to superhuman effort. "I only succeeded because I worked 3 times harder than anyone else, not because I'm smart." If there was procrastination, success is attributed to luck. "I got lucky this time. I just scraped by." Step 5. Reinforcement of the fraudulent feeling. Because success was not linked to an intrinsic and stable ability, the person's core belief is not contradicted, but, on the contrary, is reinforced. The individual is left with the feeling that they have managed to fool others again. Each success becomes further proof of the fraud, and increases the pressure and fear that at the next challenge, the mask will fall. Thus, when a new task arises, the cycle repeats, often with an even higher level of anxiety. The imposter phenomenon is far from being a simple, benign self-doubt. It is a chronic source of stress and psychological distress, with strong and well-documented links to various mental health problems, psychological comorbidities. Research consistently shows a significant positive correlation between the intensity of imposter feelings and symptoms of generalized anxiety, depression, and burnout. The perpetual fear of evaluation, fear of failure, and feelings of guilt about success create a toxic internal environment. People with imposter feelings are caught in a cycle of overworking to prove their worth, which leads directly to emotional and physical exhaustion. Erosion of self-esteem. Although they are distinct concepts, the imposter phenomenon and low self-esteem have a bidirectional relationship. On one hand, pre-existing low self-esteem can make a person more vulnerable to developing imposter feelings. On the other hand, the chronic experience of being unable to internalize success and attributing achievements to luck gradually erodes. This leads to reduced overall life satisfaction and a persistent feeling of unhappiness. Isolation and shame. One of the most insidious features of the phenomenon is its isolating nature. Affected individuals suffer in silence, convinced they are the only ones who feel this way and terrified that if they were to speak up, they would be found out. This silence, fueled by shame, prevents them from seeking support, whether from colleagues, friends, or professionals, thus reinforcing the negative cycle of doubt and anxiety. The impact of the imposter phenomenon extends beyond internal suffering, having concrete and damaging consequences for professional development. It acts as an invisible brake, preventing otherwise highly capable individuals from reaching their full potential, avoiding opportunities and stagnation. The fear of not living up to expectations leads individuals to avoid risks. They will turn down promotions, challenging projects, or leadership roles, not because they lack competence, but because they fear that greater responsibility will expose their supposed fraud. This avoidance of growth inevitably leads to career stagnation and deep professional dissatisfaction. Self-sabotaging behaviors. Recent research has established a direct link between the imposter phenomenon and various forms of One study showed that imposter feelings predict tendencies towards self-handicapping and submissive behavior. For example, a person may deliberately procrastinate on completing an important project. If the project fails, they have a ready-made excuse. If the project succeeds, they can attribute the success to luck, keeping their imposter belief intact. These behaviors, while protecting the ego in the short term from confronting a possible failure, undermine actual performance in the long term and reinforce the feeling of inadequacy, inhibiting innovation and contribution. In a work environment, the fear of making mistakes and being judged negatively inhibits creativity and the desire to contribute new ideas. Innovation, by its nature, involves vulnerability and risk, exactly the things a person with imposter feelings strives to avoid. Thus, valuable individuals may remain silent in meetings, despite having relevant perspectives, depriving the team and the organization of their contribution. In conclusion, the imposter phenomenon is a powerful and destructive force. It not only generates significant psychological distress, but also actively limits human potential, with real costs for both individuals and the organizations they are part of. Overcoming imposter feelings is a process that requires conscious effort and multiple strategies, targeting both the restructuring of internal thought patterns and the modification of the external environment. Evidence-based approaches from clinical and organizational psychology offer a clear map for this journey toward authenticity. These strategies can be grouped into 4 main categories: cognitive restructuring, cultivating self-compassion, creating supportive environments, and developing a personal toolkit for resilience. Cognitive behavioral therapy is recognized as one of the most effective methods for combating the dysfunctional thoughts that underlie the imposter phenomenon. The fundamental principle of CBT is that it is not events themselves that cause us distress, but our interpretation of them. The imposter phenomenon is fueled by a series of misinterpretations, known as cognitive distortions. The first step is to learn to recognize these thinking traps. Among the most common distortions that fuel imposter feelings are all or nothing thinking, seeing situations in black and white extremes. For example, if my report isn't absolutely perfect, then it's a total failure. Discounting the positive, actively rejecting positive experiences, insisting they don't count. For example, I received praise for the presentation, but anyone could have done that. It was just luck. Mind reading, assuming, without evidence, that you know what others are thinking, usually negatively, about you. For example, I know everyone in this meeting thinks I don't belong here. Catastrophizing, always anticipating the worst possible scenario, and exaggerating the negative consequences. For example, if I make a mistake on this project, I'll be fired and my career will be ruined. Labeling, attributing a global negative label to yourself based on a single event. For example, I made a calculation error, so I'm in. At the end of this in-depth analysis, a central conclusion emerges. The imposter phenomenon, despite the real suffering it causes, is not an indicator of incompetence, but a paradox of performance. It is not a character flaw or an intrinsic mental disorder, but a complex psychological experience, often an understandable response to social and environmental pressures that are themselves unrealistic and irrational. It is the silent proof of the high standards individuals impose on themselves and the competitive environments they navigate, not evidence of their lack of worth. We have seen how this feeling of fraudulence is born from early family dynamics. That link worth to performance is cultivated by academic and professional environments that promote fierce competition, and is exacerbated by systemic inequities that make individuals from marginalized groups constantly question whether they truly belong. We have dissected the vicious cycle through which success, instead of alleviating doubt, fuels it, and we have explored the various masks it wears, from the perfectionist to the expert, from the soloist to the superhuman. Its impact is vast and profound, leaving in its wake a trail of anxiety, depression, and burnout, while silently sabotaging promising careers by preventing talented individuals from taking risks, accepting promotions, and making their full contribution. Its high prevalence, confirmed by global studies, shows that this is not a solitary struggle but a common experience in modern, performance-oriented society. However, hope and the way out are as real as the problem itself. Evidence-based strategies, from cognitive restructuring that teaches us to challenge our distorted thoughts, to cultivating self-compassion that offers us an emotional refuge from provide powerful tools for individual change. But perhaps most importantly, recognizing the systemic roots of the phenomenon shifts some of the burden from the individual's shoulders and places it where it belongs. On the shoulders of organizations and leaders who have the power to create cultures based on psychological safety, constructive feedback, and genuine inclusion. Ultimately, overcoming imposter feelings does not mean achieving a state of arrogant and infallible confidence. That would be just another form of unrealistic pressure. The goal is, rather, to cultivate a confident humility, a balanced self-perception that allows for the simultaneous recognition of real competence and the space for continuous growth. The stories of those who have successfully navigated this terrain show us that managing these feelings is a process, not a final destination. Reclaiming one's own worth is an act of resistance against the voices, both internal and external, that tell us we are not enough. It is, in essence, the assertion of the fundamental right to confidently and authentically occupy the place that, through work and merit, we have earned.